They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Hey guys, welcome to episode number 2. It's the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
I'm Katie Gorka.
And we are back. Now we're rolling right along. Episode 2, thank you for joining us. This is our brand new project, and we really appreciate if you subscribe, if you give us a like, if you share, if you leave us comments, and if you have topics you'd like us to take a look at or people you'd like to hear us talk to, let us know as well in the comment section. We'll be working through all of that. And today, Katie, we are talking about some of the top issues, some of the hot topics of the week. And this story, I live in Los Angeles. USC, University of Southern California, right literally down the streets in the heart of downtown LA. And I held on to this story for you because I thought it was so interesting, and I'm struggling with it because I'm a huge advocate for free speech. I may not like what you have to say, but I will stand next to you and fight for your right to say it. And on USC's campus, they chose a valedictorian last week who happens to be very loud and a very pro-Palestinian student. She's gone to social media. She's become sort of an influencer. She has maybe what borderlines on hateful messages when it comes to Israel, but she also had the grades and the extracurriculars to get appointed valedictorian by her school. Well, the school realized that there were some pro-Israel groups who were going to show up at the graduation to try to protest her speech as valedictorian. So they were a little concerned about that. Then they heard that pro-Palestinian protesters would show up as well at this graduation. And they said, you know what, we can't handle the mess. No valedictorian speech. We're going against history. We are going to just cancel the speech entirely. Well, a lot of people went crazy. And I have to tell you, on my local radio show on The Morning Answer, which I do here in Southern California, I said I didn't think they should have canceled it because even though I don't like what this woman has to say, she made the qualifications, she should have been allowed to speak. But they said they couldn't guarantee people's safety at the graduation, so they decided to cancel. Well, the feedback and the backlash on this was huge. And USC just came out a couple of days ago and said, you know what, we are canceling every outside speaker. We're basically just going to read kids' names, and that's going to be the end of it. They had John Chu, who was the producer of Crazy Rich Asians and of Wicked, which is coming up, great show. And he was a student at USC, so he was going to come back as an alumnus. And they were going to have Billie Jean King, who, of course, is a tennis icon, huge in Southern California, is a partial member now of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Both of those speeches are wiped out. They're going to do a bare bones graduation because of all the backlash. And that troubled me because you have a lot of parents who paid a lot of money to send their kids to USC. You have a lot of kids who did the work to go to USC that deserve a special graduation. And I feel like because of these freedom of speech issues, we are kind of punishing everybody in this scenario. So I'm really curious to know what you think about that. And then we can kind of move on to the greater picture of what's happening on college campuses. But what do you think?
Well, I'm curious, what was the reason given for canceling these other speeches? I get the first one. I get the valedictorian. I have to say I differ with you a little bit.
I'm glad you do, because I said I struggled with this, because there is a very fine line between free speech and hate speech. And so what do we want to prop up? In this particular case, because it was one girl, I felt like they should give her parameters or maybe make her like approve her speech or whatever it might be, and then bring in extra security to protect the people going to that graduation. They didn't do that. And now we see what's happening on campuses all over the place. And I do believe there have to be restrictions on what you can do, what's appropriate. There needs to be a line drawn in the sand, I think, for sure, when it comes to making sure that people feel safe enough and that they're not getting called a pig or worse when they go on campuses. So it's okay that we disagree on this one, because I think it is one of these areas where conservatives probably struggle if they are freedom of speech advocates, yet we still want to protect people and make everybody feel safe as well.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of hypocrisy on the college campuses who've made such a big deal about, safe spaces and, not wanting to offend people. But suddenly it's okay to be so offensive to Jewish people. Like what, what happened there? So I find that really troubling. And, for me, yes, I 100% will support the right to free speech. But honestly, I think that a graduation speech is somewhat of a unique environment because in a way the valedictorian is speaking for the community. They are speaking to the community. They're not just voicing their own personal opinion out into the world, right? And so I don't think it's too much to ask that a valedictorian speech not be deeply offensive to a part of that community. You wouldn't allow it if it was any other community, right? You wouldn't allow a conservative to get up and say something offensive to, let's say, LGBT, right?
Totally. And this is why I'm saying I think there has to be parameters, or maybe they needed to agree to approve her speech before she gave it. But the reason I feel this way is I think that if it was a conservative student that was valedictorian and they were shut down, I'd be going nuts. I'd be going apoplectic because I would not like that they were shutting down conservative speech. So I guess...
But it depends on what they're shutting it down for. Wouldn't you agree that if it was a conservative who was going to get up and say something really like, let's say, anti-Black or anti-anybody, right? I mean, it's one thing to get up and speak for your principles, but to say something that's going to be offensive to a part of the community, I don't think you would.
No, but do we know what she was going? I mean, we don't know what her valedictorian speech was going to be.
No.
I mean, we're judging her by her social media platform, which is what a lot of conservatives are judged by right now, too. And so it's like, I feel like there needs to be just a sense of sanity where we don't throw out everything because of one person, but that we just have a sense that, like, just common sense should reign. Okay, fine. You have this crazy social media platform. You say these really strange things, but if you're speaking as a valedictorian, what is your speech going to look like? And, can you trust that person to deliver it? It's interesting. USC right now has not changed. The head of USC will not come out and talk to local media. They've really kind of shut everything down, and it'll be interesting to see if they get any more backlash. I know local media particularly has said that they're acting a little cowardly here, that if they're going to make those big decisions, they should defend them. So far, they have not. But this is just a small piece of what's happening on college campuses across the country. And this is where I think you and I will be more aligned, because you have things going on now at Columbia where you have protests that are so out of control. Columbia University has literally sent people home. They said they can't guarantee the safety of Jewish students. They're sending everybody to virtual classes. Now, you spend a lot of money to go to these schools. You're supposed to get a college experience. What you're not paying for is being sent home to have online classes, but you also have to consider safety concerns. You've got a lot of people on the left saying these are peaceful protests, but they don't feel peaceful when you have people saying all kinds of racial slurs and making threats at other students. And so I think it's really important for us to talk about, because there are kids who are getting caught up in this. There are so many issues about how college campuses become the breeding ground for this kind of thought and this kind of behavior. And you just wrote your book, Next Gen Marxism. I mean, this is really a launch pad for this kind of hatred. It seems to be college campuses are ground zero now. And it's not just Columbia, it's Yale, it's Berkeley, it's college campuses from left coast to right coast.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one of the things that we really looked at in the book was, what's been happening on college campuses. It's been going on for decades now. We talk about the fact that you had the European revolutionaries when their revolutions failed in Italy and Germany, and they had to flee. Where did they come? They came to the United States. And who was one of the schools that welcomed them most was Columbia University, gave them an intellectual home. And then I also remember the story about McGeorge Bundy as the dean of students at Harvard inviting Fidel Castro to come and address the students after Castro had just overthrown the regime in Cuba. So it's like this has been going on for a long time, and the fact that we've arrived at this point really shouldn't come as any surprise. I just, I find it I'm really just surprised, that we had an earlier phase of this, right after the attack of Hamas on Israel, and you had those, you had a wave of protests at that point, and there seemed to be a really strong reaction, right? You had some very notable alumni withdraw their support for these schools. You had the heads of the colleges, heads of three of the schools called up before Congress in a hearing. One had to resign.
Yeah.
What are we going to see now? I mean, I think it's shocking what's going on. The treatment of the Jewish students is unacceptable. Will there be any repercussion? That's what I'd love to know.
And sadly, I don't feel hopeful that there's going to be repercussions, but I do think it's worth examining that Israel is like the only country on the planet that is not allowed to defend itself. It seems that this is not something that Israel initiated. This is not something that they started. This was a gruesome attack, not just on their people. This wasn't just throwing a few rockets down. This was deeply personal and deeply violating. Women being raped and tortured and killed, babies being torn out of a woman's stomach. I mean, this was a very personal attack on Israel, and it was meant to send a message that they look to commit genocide against this people. So to have groups of people, it's so highly insulting that they will not let Israel defend themselves, and that people in this country think that they are free to comment on that and that they should be able to tell Israel how to respond and what to do. That to me is just so outwardly offensive. And I feel like they feel empowered to do that, Katie, because there's no leadership. We don't have leadership on this front in the White House. We have these college campus presidents who are just running scared. You've got everybody trying to play both sides of the issue, and no one's willing to take a stand and talk about what's good and bad, what's right and wrong, saying that you can protest certain acts of war, but you can't call Jewish students pigs and say, I am Hamas, I wish you were dead. I don't know where that leadership is, but it is not in existence right now. No one's willing to take that step up.
Well, I'll tell you, I think this is a perfect example of a case where we as American citizens don't need to be waiting for somebody else to swoop in and save us. Parents can step in and take a leadership role here. Parents,
pull their kids out of these schools. First step, probably.
Parents should be putting their foot down. Alumni should be putting their foot down. I mean, it's one of the only ways we're going to fight back on this. I was interested to see in Barry Weiss's Substack, The Free Press. She's got an article posted. It's not by her. It's by somebody named Eric Spitznagel. He's got an article that just went up yesterday called Kids Are Giving Up on Elite Colleges and Heading South. And then the subtitle is, Even if I could have gotten into Harvard, I wouldn't have gone. And the argument that he's making is that he, as a Jewish student, feels that because of the rise of anti-Semitism on these elite campuses, he did not want to go. And he chose to go to a Southern college because he felt that it would be a safer, more inclusive environment. That's leadership, actually. That's somebody, there's just so much that we as individual citizens can do to stand up to this. And if enough of us are doing it, it starts to be heard.
It is. And when they start getting hit with their donors, I mean, one of the biggest things Sean Hannity had on Robert Kraft, who is the owner of the Patriots. And don't get me wrong, he's had a very colorful history, but Robert Kraft said, you know what? Columbia was my alma mater. I'm out. I'm not giving money anymore. That's going to hurt them, because that was hundreds of thousands of dollars that university is going to be out without his backing. That's the only way that you can really send a message. And when their enrollment dips and when people stop giving that big money, and by the way, this is a time to call on people in Hollywood too, to say, enough is enough. Stop backing these protests. This is not just about peaceful protesting now. You have real threats being made. We need culture to say that this is not appropriate. And I got to say, I was somewhat heartened. I tell you this, I ping pong through some of the morning shows to see what people are talking about before I do my morning answer show. And MSNBC has been so difficult to listen to. I mean, it's always bad, but it's been really bad lately. But this morning, as we speak today, on the morning show, they were talking about how Israel doesn't get to defend itself, that Israel is taking all this heat, that people are, I mean, this is MSNBC, and that they even pointed out that their ratio of innocent lives is the lowest of any other war or conflict in any recorded history.
Wow.
So think about that. And that's MSNBC saying it. So we do have, and I'm going to actually give them props because that's a place where you wouldn't expect to hear that. So I will say, well done to them, because we need more people doing this so that we kind of say what's appropriate and what's not. We need to define that. Now, you got a story out of San Diego, out of UCSD, speaking of universities. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so this came up the other day, and I have to say this is a little bit sensitive for us in our family because we've got a son who's been trying to get into med school, and he, looks like he's got absolutely everything going for him. He cannot even get into his backups, so I'm a little bit sensitive to this. So the story is that University of California at San Diego has announced a new policy on April 9th to exclude students whose parent is college educated and makes over $45,000 from enrolling in computer science or other selective majors unless spots are available after first generation or low income students enroll.
Come on.
I mean, I'm sorry, where is the justice in that? I mean,
and where's the ACLU? That is discrimination, if I have ever heard of it.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So $45,000, and if your family was college educated.
Yeah. So, I mean, I say, God bless those efforts to give a leg up to people that, haven't had the blessings of an educated family or, the blessings of two parents. But is there not a way to do it that you're not discriminating against the others? I mean, it's just, it's not right. And I hope there's a backlash and an uproar over that because it feels so wrong.
It feels so wrong. And of course, there are impacted majors. When I was going through college, I was a radio, TV, film major, and I couldn't get any of my classes, which switched me over to journalism, which I'm very happy for because it really gave me a insight into what people should be doing in journalism and are not doing. But when I was going through that, it was a lottery system, which may stink if you didn't get picked, but at least everybody was on fair ground to get those classes in impacted majors. Wow. All right, well, we have some culture stories as well today. You saw Barbie, right?
I didn't yet.
Oh, gosh, you got to see Barbie. Okay.
I know.
So, Greta Gerwig is the producer of the Barbie movie, which was hugely successful.
Wait, she was the producer or the director?
Director. I'm sorry. Okay. She was a director.
Okay.
I misspoke. She was a director of Barbie, and she got a lot of accolades. Now she's setting her sights on Narnia, the Chronicles of Narnia. And I was talking to one of our producers here at Salem Radio in LA that works on our morning show, Daniel West. He's such a cool young man. And he came to me and he said, Greta Gerwig's got a hold of Chronicles of Narnia. And I said, wow. Now, I haven't read that since the third grade. But there are a lot of Christian overtones in the Chronicles of Narnia. A lot of people look at the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Through the Looking Glass is really kind of metaphors for God, his relationship with us. And so I thought to myself, is Greta Gerwig going to actually pay tribute to what was not only just a very popular group of books, but is she going to do it right? And I'm a little nervous about it because I was really on the fence with Barbie. I didn't go in. I know a lot of people went in either wanting to love it or hate it. I kind of went in in a neutral mode. As a kid, I know it's a big surprise because I'm like your typical girly girl, but I loved Barbie. I had Barbie everything. Barbie dolls, Barbie clothes, Barbie dream house, all that stuff. The Corvette, everything. I loved it. And I always took issue with people who said that Barbie was a bad role model for young people because they made it all about her looks. It was always, she's, terrible body image, all that stuff for young girls. I looked at it as Barbie had all these different jobs. She did everything she wanted to do. She was a veterinarian. She went to space. She ran an ice cream store. She did everything. And she had Ken and she had her friends. And Barbie, to me, I looked at as someone who was a strong woman who, when she saw what she wanted, she went after and did that. Maybe I was just a little Pollyanna kid, but that's how I always thought about it. So when Barbie came out, I was very excited, but I was worried that they were going to turn this into something political. And it was a yes and no. The beauty of Barbie was at the beginning, seeing Barbie Land and seeing how they did that. It was really neat to see that come to life in a movie. And I think she did a nice job with that. But then instead of just talking about strong women, she kind of has to hit men, right? She has to take a hit at Ken. And I believe I'm a strong woman. I consider myself to be the best kind of feminist, not the kind that you would think about, but the kind that says I can be a strong woman and do wonderful things for my family and make wonderful contributions to society and work without being a man hater. And so what got me about the Barbie movie is it felt like to be a strong woman, well, you have to beat down on men. And I didn't like that part of it because I just don't believe that to be true. I believe everybody can be strong and we all have roles to fulfill. And so I'm really concerned that Greta Gerwig is going to now maybe go into the Chronicles of Narnia, which so many of us love, and Gerwig it.
Yeah, I mean, C.S. Lewis, the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, is considered one of the great Christian writers of the 20th century. So I think it's a valid concern. I mean, I think it's going to be a real shame if it gets, if that element gets sort of taken out. Now, to be fair, the Christian element for me in the Chronicles of Narnia has always been a little bit, odd. It's not super direct. And so I don't know. I think I honestly, personally, I have sort of mixed feelings. Like, I did not love the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
But yet I really don't want to see it destroyed. So it'll be very interesting to see what she does with it.
I know. I'm curious. And it could, and look, she may be totally, it may be something great. It may be what we anticipate, but it is risky no matter what. Whenever you take a franchise, and I don't mean to compare the Chronicles of Narnia with Barbie, but there's expectations with both, with people who had, if they had impact on you, right? And so it is a risky proposition to not create something new as a director and instead try to give your adaptation of something that's important to people. I mean, so I guess in that respect, I give her props because that is a gigantic undertaking. I hope it comes out. Now, I talked to Daniel and I said, what do you think about whether or not she's going to give this its respect? Now, he liked the Barbie movie. He thought the heavy-handedness with men was funny. I thought it was funny for about 4 seconds and then it got to be too much. It was too long. But he thinks that she's going to actually do it justice. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how this comes out. It's going to be on Netflix, though, so I don't even know if it'll be on the big screen. This is a deal that she signed with Netflix, and we'll see how it comes out. Netflix is like the new main player, though. I mean, it's so funny how many movies just go straight to Netflix and just skip over the movie theater experience. That's a whole nother topic, how that really got lost going to the movies during COVID. It seems like it's just almost died out.
Yeah. Now, I want to mention another one that I'm excited about. And I didn't expect this to be coming out, but this is apparently there's going to be a new movie coming out on May 3rd about the Southern Christian writer Flannery O'Connor. Now, here's the interesting backstory. Ethan Hawke is involved, the actor, and his daughter, Maya Hawke. So the story is...
She was in Stranger Things, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
She was one of the older teenagers in that.
So apparently when she was auditioning for Juilliard, the prestigious acting school, she came across Flannery O'Connor's prayer journals, and she put together a monologue based on those journals. So just that backstory is kind of intriguing. It'll be really interesting to see. I think she's the one who's going to be playing Flannery O'Connor, and it's going to be interesting to see what she brings to this, and whether maybe because of her own experience, it retains that Christian element. I'm intrigued. I want to see it.
I love it. Okay, so do we know when this is coming out? You said next month?
May 3rd. Yeah, supposedly May 3rd, I presume in theaters.
I kind of love, and I'm interested because of the backstory you just told me. That sounds amazing. But I also get very intrigued by families like Ethan Hawke and his daughter. They lived really below, and the mom is Uma Thurman, so they're like that's like a high-powered star couple. I don't even think they're together, but I don't even know, and that's the point. I love the stories of these families that kind of work together behind the scenes and create these projects as a family. I think that's really cool, and they're not in it just for the headlines. Like, there are moments watching Stranger Things when I was like, this girl is so unique looking, and I looked her up, and I see that she's Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's daughter, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And now I start following them and realize that she and her dad do projects together all the time. And I think because I'm so close to my parents and I know you and your kids are so close together, I just love those stories and celebrating their work because it's like a family project and it doesn't feel like the Hollywood gross, where it's just out there for the headlines. They're just out there for the likes on Instagram. Like they actually seem to be doing it for the art, which I love.
Yeah. I'll mention one more quick thing. So this past weekend, I was out in Chestertown, Maryland, where my mom lives. We had a big family reunion, and one of the best used bookstores in the world that still survives is in Chestertown, Maryland. I love this store. I cannot go to that town without going in and buying books. And part of what's fun about it is you can just sort of stroll around. It's, first of all, immaculate. I believe a used bookstore should be orderly and tidy.
Yeah, it can't be all crazy.
Yeah, and it's super neat and tidy. So I just, what's the fun about used bookstores is that I think it's easier to just sort of pick up random books, right? You don't have to, you're not paying full price, so you're not so careful. So I picked up a stack of books, and one I was so excited to discover is by the author Percival Everett. Now, does that name ring any bell for you?
It's a little familiar, but I don't know why. It just kind of ran like a little bit of recognition.
Yeah. So it didn't, the light bulb didn't go off for me either, and it was only when I started reading it. So the book is called Telephone, and it was only when I started reading it that, in a way, the voice of it was so recognizable, and I thought to myself, now, is this the guy who wrote the novel on which the movie American Fiction was based?
That's why.
Yes, and it is. And I got to tell you, so American Fiction, as we have talked about in other places, I loved that movie. Of all the Academy Award nominees, that was far and away my favorite. And if you haven't seen it yet, it is so, so good. So it's a story of an African-American professor of English. It sounds very autobiographical, who's written many books. And I got to tell you, when you open this book and you see the list of books that Percival Everett has published, I mean, I didn't count it, but I think it's got to be around 40 books. I mean, this guy is crazy prolific.
Yeah.
So the main character in American Fiction is complaining that as an African-American author, nobody's really that interested in what he has to write, until he kind of makes a spoof novel fulfilling everybody's cliched expectation that it's all ghetto talk, right?
Yep.
So it's a real stab at kind of wokeness and political correctness and stereotyping of blacks. But I got to tell you, so I'm a big reader. Yeah, I know you're a big reader. We love to talk about books, and I just feel like by reading this book and discovering Percival Everett, I feel like I've discovered this great new treasure, and I'm really excited. I want to read more of his books.
Oh, I can't wait. Now you're making me want to do that too. I watched the film, never read any of his books, but I will tell you, I love subtle messaging. I hate when things are heavy-handed. It's probably why I didn't like Barbie. Hate when things are heavy-handed. And of course, I'm conservative, so it's hard to find heavy-handed conservative stuff. But I thought American Fiction not only had that great kind of anti-woke culture message, but what I loved about it, what kept me there, were the relationships and the family relationships and the dialogue back and forth. It was just an incredibly smart movie. So I'd be so excited to read some of his books. I didn't even think about doing that. So now you've given me a project.
Good. All right.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. This is episode 2, the Happy Women Podcast. Please subscribe, like us, share us with your friends, and leave us comments. And if there's anything you'd like us to chat about, leave it there. We'll be sure to check it out. And thanks so much for being with us. Bye.